Turn that frown upside down.
Well, there's our lead in. Well, welcome to another edition of EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Today we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers and, more pointedly, David Blatt. And I guess ex-David Blatt, because he's no longer the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to get into that discussion. We're going to talk about Tyronn Lue, the new coach the new / old coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers, depending on what piece of news you listen to and what you believe and what you don't believe. I am Jim Pete, the Cleveland.com. Joining me today, as always, is Michael Hattery. Michael, we're on the eve of the AFC and the NFC championship games. Peyton Manning, and perhaps his last run to the Super Bowl, has beaten, well, the defense really beat the Patriots, but that's neither here nor there. The Broncos are in the Super Bowl, about to play between Arizona and Carolina. And Mike, I know you have some enticing thoughts on one Peyton Manning. What are your thoughts? Is this a wonderful swell? He could win the Super Bowl, dude, on his way out.
Yeah, he's such an enjoyable sports personality. You know, he's just climbing on the backs of a defense. The guy is like a worse than league average NFL quarterback anymore. I don't think people realize how wildly incompetent Peyton Manning has been this year. And there are these wonderful narratives about how he's somehow pulling it together for one last ride. Good heavens.
It's all about, is David Griffin told us, it's all about the chemistry. And they're happy in their locker room. That's the difference. I suppose that statement right there kind of lets the listener know where we're going with this. And either a bunch of people clicked off or they're now rallying behind us. I'm guessing it's probably the former.
I would hope it's clicked off, but I'm truly excited for 67 Papa John's ads in the next 2 weeks. I cannot tell you how excited I am for.
Wait, are we going to get? Are we getting a free pizza out of this? Are we getting a free pizza out of this? If that's the case, then I'm all for Peyton Manning.
It's Papa John's, Jim. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not pizza. Don't call that pizza.
I'm a teacher, man. That's like steak to me. That's like steak to me. I digress. The big news of the week is not Peyton Manning. Who the hell cares about the NFL at this point? We're Cavaliers fans. The big news, of course, Friday, one David Blatt, he of the 30-11 record, he of the 84-40 record, was fired because the chemistry of the team, or however you want to word it, was off. David Griffin in his press conference noted that as he was in the locker room over the year, really over the 2 years, he just felt that something wasn't right. And there are so many different ways we could go about this podcast, Mike. I think we should just probably start rambling on, and we'll just end up where we end up. I guess we start with this. David Blatt versus Tyronn Lue. That's really been the conversation nearly from the start. These are the top two candidates 18 months ago for this job. The Cavaliers unprecedentedly hired Blatt, probably because he was about to get signed by Golden State. And in a move I've never seen before, the guy he was up against gets hired as the highest paid assistant, basically as if we can't pass go, we're going to collect the Tyronn Lue $200 or $100 monopoly money. And that's exactly what happened 18 months later. So let's get the first thoughts out there. I'm trying not to sound. I don't know that I'm bitter about it, Mike, but I'm confused. Like, this move to me is confusing. I get all of the things that people have been saying. Is it a LeBron thing? Yes. Is it a chemistry thing? Is it a he's overwhelmed thing? I don't know. I mean, we're going to go down all these paths, but just your first thoughts on this. We've had a game since then. They got blown out. I don't think that's a surprise. And, that's nothing. I'm not trying to knock Tyronn Lue, but what are your first thoughts? Like, what's going on here? How can we have chaos with the number one ranked team in the East?
I think that what I'm about to do is a lot of sort of um, 2020 vision on what should have happened. But I do think that there's something really substantive to hiring Lou in the position he was in was an absolute mess organizationally. I think it was really foolish. You essentially hired someone who the best player in the league at the time and the most important player on your roster respected more than your head coach to be your assistant coach. And if you expect that that's going to create some sort of stable long-term relationship, I think that's foolish. Of course, I wasn't saying that when Ty Lue was hired for that role, so me saying that now is probably pretty unfair. But it just seems like situationally, David Blatt didn't have a tremendous position in order to deal. Um, it sucks. I mean, this situation absolutely stinks. There aren't a lot of coaches out there to be had that are really substantive improvements over what they had, I think. And Ty Lue, to me, is nothing particularly innovative or creative on the basketball court. I suppose learning uh, under Doc Rivers is an important trait, but Lou isn't noted for some sort of creative basketball mind. He's much like the retreads we see around like Mark Jackson, perhaps less volatile inside an organization. So I'm not excited about this. I think it's just chaos, and I know we're 4 months away from the conference finals and the NBA title, but this is an awful situation to be in.
Well, and I'm not going to get into this. Well, it's a Cleveland thing, and it does seem kind of odd that these weird, strange things happen with our Cleveland teams, and especially when you compare it to the NFL and to the Major League team. I think we see this kind of chaos here and there, but it's an unprecedented move. Let's start here. I think the big knock on Blatt from the start, Mike, was that he didn't have NBA experience as a head coach. Really didn't have NBA experience, period. He wasn't a player in the NBA. He wasn't a head coach in the NBA. However, he was a successful European head coach that David Griffin and many other general managers in the NBA thought highly of because of both his handling of unique offenses and his unique handling of defense as well. Lots of titles. This is a guy who's won a lot of titles in Europe. Again, it's not the NBA, but has a ton of experience as a head coach. But that has been an interesting knock on him, especially coming from a team of millionaires who question his NBA knowledge. Now, the flip side of this coin is that, Lou has been lauded as an NBA veteran who can step right in as a head coach. But you noted in your initial volley, this is a guy who's never been a head coach. This is a guy that doesn't bring, the one thing I haven't heard, when we talked about Byron Scott coming in, I think the big thing with Byron Scott was that he was an offensive coach. Mike Brown, he came in as a defensive coach. Tyronn Lue is not a guy who's discussed, at least to my knowledge, as somebody who's innovative on either side of the ball. He, of course, was the defensive coach for the Cavs and has had experience under some of these, he was a player under Phil Jackson and several other really good coaches. He went to Nebraska, the vaunted college powerhouse, the Cornhuskers, but he has played under some guys, and he was with Doc Rivers, what am I missing here? I mean, is this buddy ball? Is this LeBron buddy ball? I mean, you mentioned this relationship between the two. It is true that there are several NBA players that think highly of him. Can this be successful, or was this one of those moves where it's like you have a binder for your notebook paper and you just decide that you want a trapper keeper, so you go get a trapper keeper and nothing really changes? Is that really what we're looking at here? They just didn't want to hang out with David Blatt anymore.
Yeah, I don't think David Blatt was cool enough because he hadn't played in the league long enough. I'm really not going to enjoy when Blatt's hired as an assistant coach with San Antonio or Golden State in the next 2 months. I'll tell you that. And I'm not going to enjoy in 2 years when he's the head coach of a really good team again. I'm not going to enjoy that either. Ty Lue is the most uninspiring replacement you could possibly find. And he's uninspiring in the absolute worst ways because he's someone who I'm not incredibly thrilled with a coach who's good buddies with LeBron and who LeBron decides to talk to. Um, I think LeBron's somebody who his greatness is fundamentally based in a sort of basketball understanding that's exceptional. I think he's an absolutely brilliant basketball player. I think his basketball IQ is off the charts. But I also think it's dangerous to him. I think there are often times where LeBron realizes that he's the smartest man in the room a lot of the time, and he likes to have people around him who are unthreatening, and don't establish sort of significant lines and significant power over him. So I think that's really tough, and I don't think Ty Lue is the guy that's going to do that. And I think,
But wait. So again, here's another one of those enigmatic moments, because of course the big knock on Blatt was that he just let see. Here's where all of this gets confounding to me, because I think the big knock on Blatt is that he just kind of let the big three do whatever they want, and the big plus for Ty Lue is that he'll get in the grill of LeBron, he'll get in the grill of Kevin Love, he'll get in the grill of Kyrie Irving. But didn't you just say that they're friends? Like, this doesn't fit to me.
yeah, I just think that some guy that LeBron took to the, took for 30 points a game when he was playing and could take whenever he wanted, uh, coaching him now just because he played in the league. I just don't see how this is a threatening relationship to LeBron. I don't see how this is someone who he suddenly respects. Um, I think it's a pretty distinct problem, and maybe they work it out. I don't totally buy into Lou's talked about the fact that Love is going to have to give up some more usage, and playing with Love's usage even more, which I think is the wrong thing to do. I think one of the big problems is that they haven't deferred to Love enough in the post and outside. So I think, I don't think he's the guy who's going to utilize this roster most efficiently. I don't think he's the guy who's going to create an authority where LeBron actually submits some of the in-game calling to the coach. So I don't think anything changes. I think the law is that nothing changes, and we lost someone who maybe could have found his sea legs and is a pretty innovative coach with a great track record for a guy who's pretty non-threatening, has no sort of head coaching history, and isn't particularly innovative.
So, I think the big discussion, in the past couple of days, and Lou said it himself. He mentioned a couple things after their loss to Chicago last night, was that he would try to figure out a way to utilize Kevin Love better. And he's got these 17, 18 different ways to, utilize pick and rolls and off the shoulder plays for Love. I mean, is in a bare minimum, Mike, if he does utilize Kevin Love offensively in a better way, wouldn't this be a winning situation, at least on the offensive side of the ball?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting how good Kevin Love has been this year and how bad we think he is. I also think one of the other really interesting narratives is that if anybody else was the third star on a team and completely submitted his role to help his team be better, completely submitted his points, his scoring, some of his rebounding occasionally, some of his passing usage. If we saw that on any other team, I think he'd be one of the most lauded stars in the game. And Kevin Love gets ripped to shreds because he's willing to do almost anything in this offense to make LeBron and Kyrie better and to win basketball games. I feel bad for Kevin Love. I think this guy just gets absolutely screwed in this situation, especially with his defensive deficiencies that look pretty bad when he's not scoring a lot. But he's really just submitting to an offense to make it more efficient. And I'd like to see them use him a little differently, but I just feel really badly for the situation Kevin Love's kind of stuck in.
Well, in the background of all this is the fact that the Cavaliers, they did go to the finals last year. They won 2 games from Golden State, and while that can be overstated, there were definitely some interesting dynamics to all that with injury issues, and LeBron played phenomenally through that stretch, as he always tends to do. I guess, don't you think that Blatt at least deserved an opportunity, being that they were 10 games ahead of where they were a year ago when he was fired this year? Don't you feel like he deserved at least the opportunity to get to the playoffs. I think, in the NBA today, Mike, I think, Shaquille O'Neal and the not Golden State, but San Antonio have kind of set the tone. Shaquille O'Neal was the guy who first said, we don't play hard until the playoffs. And San Antonio seems to live that. I mean, that mantra with, benching their stars all the time. The headline today in ESPN with them possibly benching Tim Duncan against Golden State. Don't you think that Blatt deserved at least the opportunity to get to the playoffs? I mean, nothing against David Griffin. I think he's a pretty fine general manager. Don't get me wrong here, but I'm just not okay with, well, I could just tell things weren't good in the locker room. When is it? They're 31. I mean, I don't get it. So here's my point. I don't mean to get frustrated here, but why didn't Blatt get that chance? How bad was that locker room? And if the locker room was that bad, I mean, of course you can blame the coach, but was this just a move to make a move? They can't pull another deal like they did last year to bring in J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert. So is this that move? Let's change coaches.
Yeah, I think it is that move. I really don't understand it either. I don't understand how you can have a coach, and I know LeBron gets credit for an exceptional finals with Golden State, but this is, I think Blatt has to get some credit for losing Kyrie and Kevin Love and building a sort of rough and tumble defensive scheme around LeBron that allows them to really push Golden State. I think we lose something in saying that, well, this is a guy who won 50-plus games, pushed the best team in the league by far in the finals without two exceptional players, and then is on pace for a 60-win season and likely another finals trip. I really think that's just, for me, fundamentally challenging to fire someone. I don't know what the locker room is like. I don't imagine that Gilbert Arenas is pulling guns in the locker room in Cleveland, and I guess that's the point at which I'd fire him. But I don't see how this makes them better. I don't see how you think, if there are schematic problems that feed into it. I don't see how installing someone in January is really effective for making you better schematically. So it's really all, I guess, perhaps, that sort of chemistry.
It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. He's 84. I mean, let's just get down to it. This guy is 84. And now listen, you can talk about roster all you want, but this roster has been a cluster muck from the start. Granted, they've got the big three, and we've had problems much worse than this before, but you've had injury issues. You had major issues last year trying to make the fit. You had a big deal. You had LeBron missing a week in his hyperbolic chamber. You had all of this insanity last year. You had Love get his arm ripped out. You had Kyrie bust his kneecap, and they still win 2 games against one of the better teams in recent memory. They come back. They're 10 games ahead of where they were last year, with Mozgov playing like garbage, with Kyrie missing much of the year, with the lineup not fitting. This is unprecedented. I mean, this is ridiculous. Watching social media just be okay. Well, the locker room was, I mean, give me a break. This team was garbage pre-LeBron, and they were punching each other out in the locker room. That's problems in the locker room. Pouting in the locker room? These guys make millions of dollars. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I also love the sourcing that we're using for how bad the locker room situation is. As much as I give a shit about what Brandon Haywood and Lou Amundsen have to say, I really don't. I guess there's frustration in the locker room, but
I mean, the Haywood. It's so funny. I saw the Haywood tweet yesterday, and I was like, "Who the hell is Haywood? Who's that writer?" And I'm literally like rooting around trying to figure out who this writer is. I'm like, are they talking about the player? Are you kidding me? Like, oh, I don't know. And I don't mean to rant. And listen, at the end of the day, it's a coach. And you and I, Mike, have discussed coaches from baseball to football to basketball. And in the end, the only coaches that make a legit amount of difference are the really elite ones. And I'm not saying that Blatt is or isn't. I don't know that we know that yet with regards to David Blatt. I just don't understand, what are the Cavs setting up Tyronn Lue for? If there is something there, Mike, if there is something there with Tyronn Lue, like how fast do we have to get there? What if they don't make it to the finals? If they don't make it to the finals and you compare Tyronn Lue to David Blatt, does that not mean he's a failure compared to David Blatt? Now, maybe you get away with saying, okay, he didn't get them in training camp. Maybe he gets a training camp with them, but then what? Do we go the whole year? What if they pout next year? What do we do then? Like, is that what we've said? What's Tyronn Lue's future here? Would you want to be Tyronn Lue right now?
No, I think this is a rotating door. I think there's a really good chance this is a rotating door in terms of this coaching position. I think that you made a fantastic point, and I think that it's really true. I think that in every sport there are one or two managers who are in this exceptional realm where we can see a really substantive value that they add. And the rest of them are, at the margins there's a differential, but it's nothing substantive and it's nothing sustainable. And I think maybe we know David Blatt is an exceptional, but I don't think we have any reason to believe that Ty Lue is anything exceptional either. And I don't think we have any reason to believe that installing someone who isn't exceptional is useful in a season where you're 30-11 and you're doing it in January and you're expecting to compete in the finals. It doesn't make sense. The Indians have a lot of flaws, but organizationally, I can understand what they're thinking. And sometimes I disagree with what they're thinking, and I have issues with it. I absolutely do. But the Cavaliers are irritating to me because I have no idea what they're doing organizationally. Organizationally, I cannot predict what they'll do. I don't have any substantive idea of why they did what they did, and that scares me. That's not how an organization should be run. And it's not the stability it needs. And I think the situation's a mess.
Well, and it's to be fair. I mean, I think the NBA has set itself up as a players' league as opposed to the NFL and the NBA or the MLB, in that, obviously the union, the contract went a little differently than most other leagues. Players have a lot more control than in other arenas, and especially when you look at a team like Cleveland, as Kirk mentioned earlier tonight on Twitter. I mean, when you're dealing with LeBron James, a once-in-a-generation type player, you're kind of at his beck and call, especially a team like Cleveland, who was divorced from LeBron in a very strange way, who welcomed him back in a very strange way. He's whether he, in truth to LeBron, like whether he wants to be the GM or not, he is the GM of this team. And I guess his surprise, he didn't find out till 3:30 garbage yesterday. And that may be true with semantics, but we're just talking semantics here. So I think the Cavs, and maybe this is just the scenario, Mike, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't right now, aren't we? I mean, this is one of those things where we have LeBron or we piss him off and we don't. And we know what happens when LeBron gets pissed. And listen, I get it. He's got that kind of power. He's got that kind of pull. And when you have that kind of power and you've got that kind of pull, you friggin' use it. That's the way of the United States. I'm just saying, like, is he at a point now with this team where we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, that he's setting this up? Like, he's got a window that's closing. Like, LeBron's not, he's 31 years old. Like, we have to win now. And now we have a coach who's never been a head coach.
A couple things. First of all, they are in this situation where I think we're seeing the back end of LeBron's prime. I think we have the last couple of years here, maybe one or two after this one. I don't understand how LeBron has significantly more leverage than the Cavaliers in this situation. I think from a PR standpoint, if LeBron walks away from Cleveland again, I don't think that does anything for him. Secondarily, I don't know if there are a lot of places in the league with a better sort of nucleus for him to win with in the NBA if he walked out the door tomorrow. So I'm intrigued by how much leverage LeBron has compared to the Cavs, because it certainly feels like LeBron wields way more leverage in every situation, in every decision-making position than the Cavs do. But it seems to me like he shouldn't really have that extra leverage position, and I know he's exceptional. But from a PR standpoint and from where the roster is, I don't completely get it. But I think they're stuck in a situation where they're constantly bending to his beck and call, and the issue is that LeBron doesn't understand that he needs someone who challenges him as a head coach. LeBron thinks that he needs someone who understands what he's trying to do as a player, um, and runs that system. So I think one of the issues is that at points LeBron's basketball brilliance undermines LeBron on the floor and LeBron as a team player.
Well, I've always been intrigued with star players and in their roles as GMs and their roles as coaches and their roles as running teams and making their team better. And, you know, you can go down the line and look at players who have, after their careers have over, have struggled with running teams. And he seems to be in this very strange place right now that not a lot of other players have been in. Yes, Magic Johnson forced out Paul Westhead and brought in Pat Riley. Yes, we've had situations like this in the past with star players. But it seems to me, for example, you know, the counterbalance to Michael Jordan in Chicago was always Phil Jackson. They got Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson ultimately had enough weight and enough pull that he kind of transcended Michael Jordan. Believe it or not, they were kind of on that parallel. Pat Riley did the same thing in Los Angeles. You know, and the interesting thing is you were talking, Mike, and you were talking about David Blatt not being exceptional. I think if you look at exceptional coaches, from Greg Popovich to Phil Jackson to any number, Steve Kerr, Steve Kerr is maybe the one guy who kind of jumped the boat a bit quickly because he, you know, in his first full season won an NBA title. But I wonder, Mike, are we in a scenario where we just aren't going to find out if David Blatt's exceptional because we aren't giving him an opportunity to be exceptional? You know, I mean, you almost now with the Cavs have to be exceptional today. And if you're not exceptional today, people are going to pout and you're gone. And I think back to a guy like Bill Belichick, who we were talking about off air, and you could really name 1,000 other coaches who seasoned themselves for a year or two or three or four for him with the Browns until he went to New England, found his quarterback, and off he has gone. But, you know, did David Blatt not get the amount of time that he needed to make this team an NBA champion? I mean, remember, we were 2 games away last year. Might this have been a build up to the playoffs? We were 31-11 with the guy, not, according to everybody in the media over the past 2 days, not playing very well. So what happens when they do play well with the same coach? Well, we found that out last year without their 2 of the top 3 players. I don't know. I take exception to the he's not exceptional. I just don't think this is a guy who's won 20 titles or gold medals. What's Tyronn Lue won? 2 NBA titles as a backup playing for Los Angeles. No offense.
Yeah, I think my biggest point with him is I'm not sure he was ever going to be exceptional here, because I don't think he was going to be allowed to be exceptional here. I think the power situation with LeBron was I think LeBron entered having other coaches in mind, and depending on what leaks you believe, I think that's pretty clearly true. And I think David Blatt, I buy into him as an innovative guy who's really creative, and I think he's going to have success somewhere else in probably 2 or 3 years, like I said earlier. And I think he's going to get a good assistant job, and then he's going to get another good job. And he's going to be really successful. But I don't know if he would have been successful here with LeBron not buying in. And I don't know what it was going to take for David Blatt to force him to buy in. And I don't know if there's anything David Blatt could have done to make LeBron buy in. And that's a garbage situation.
Well, it's funny because I don't know that there was ever a day where David Blatt went, damn, instead of Andrew Wiggins, I have LeBron James. Like people have been saying, well, he didn't get the team he wanted. And I don't believe that. No. I believe that David Blatt, in my heart of hearts, saw the fact that he had LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and this group of really talented players behind him. And he was able to find a Matthew Dellavedova that kind of fit his mold. I think this was a wonderful opportunity to him. I think it wore down on him his last press conference. He looked beat up that Brooklyn press conference. But I I don't know. I mean, now you got David Blatt and you got some intriguing situations out there for him, whether he latches onto a team this year or likely waits until the offseason. You've got the Minnesota interim job there. You got New Jersey, or I'm sorry, Brooklyn, who's got an owner who likely is very familiar with David Blatt, being that David Blatt coached in Russia. Also, David Blatt coached in Europe for many years, and you have the Russian owner in Brooklyn, end up back in Golden State. I mean, so here's the funny thing, Mike. What if David Blatt doesn't take the Cavs job? I'd be pissed. I mean, if he doesn't take the Cavs job, what's he doing right now? He's coaching friggin' Golden State. I mean, I don't know. He got a raw deal. I guess the thing for me is David Blatt seemed like a really nice guy, and you don't see a lot of nice guys in professional sports anymore. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in Cleveland. So I guess I need to back up, but I do want to talk Tyronn Lue, and I do want to kind of get my bearings straight. So I'm going to ask you one more David Blatt question, and I do believe he's going to land on his feet. Do you think that he goes back to Europe where he's comfortable, or does he continue his dream of head coaching in the NBA? Does he wait for a head coaching job in the offseason? Does he become a thorn in the Cavs' side and perhaps latch on to a team in the East as maybe a consultant? Or does he maybe wait for Luke Walton to get a job and join Steve Kerr in Golden State next year?
I think he takes the year and takes a job in the offseason. I think the T-Wolves job would be awesome for him. I think it'd be phenomenal. I think he has great credentials to coach in the NBA now. I think you get Wiggins and Towns after they've had a year or two to learn and get comfy in the NBA, and you bring him in to install a really creative system for them on offense. And I think he could be coaching a really good team for 5 to 10 years. I think he gets another job in the NBA, which he clearly deserves. I hope to God he stays away from the Brooklyn Nets now situation, because that is an abomination of a situation, even though the fit seems right with Prokhorov. But that is just a situation I would stay away from. But I think he gets a job.
Sixers and T-Wolves. I mean, I know the Sixers are really, really bad, but they're really, really young. In a similar fashion to Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota has, a couple of guys there that can be anchors for years and years to come. And that's kind of what he was thinking he was getting here in Cleveland. So I agree with you, Mike. Both Minnesota, Urbanik and I were talking about him last night while we were watching the game, and we were talking about the potential for him to go to the T-Wolves, and that could be something that haunts Cavs fans for years and years to come. And I chuckled with trepidation because I don't know, maybe in a few years I'll be rooting for the T-Wolves. I'm not sure. Let's talk Tyronn Lue. I guess, for me, as I, Friday, I was pretty pissed as I step back and you really kind of look at this and we don't really know Tyronn Lue. He doesn't seem to have exceptionalities other than the simple fact that he seems to have a lot of good relationships with a lot of people in the NBA. He does have connections. He is well thought of, to be sure. Doc Rivers speaks highly of him, and really, he's a guy that a lot of people in the NBA root for. He is an insider, which is something that David Blatt certainly was not. It is a defensive. If he was our defensive coach, and while we are giving David Blatt a lot of credit for the defense in the playoffs, of course, you can still point to Tyronn Lue. This is a guy who's been with this team during that now 84-41 run. This isn't a lost cause, right, Mike? I mean, Tyronn Lue could prove to be an exceptional coach. We don't know yet. It doesn't seem like he's got that trait to you and I, but there does seem to be some pretty knowledgeable people out there who believe he could be a really good coach. Is it, are we looking at a situation where we might not get a chance to see that this year because of all the background with Blatt, and now it's a mid-season thing? We're literally at the halfway point. Do the Cavs ever catch up to Tyronn Lue? Or will we not get a really legitimate look at what Tyronn Lue can do as a head coach until next year?
I really like what he said last night. I like that he said that they weren't in good enough shape physically I like that he said that they ran out of gas. I like that he was publicly critical, I guess. I guess that's a positive step for challenging your superstars. So that's positive, and the fact that he challenged them and he's respected in the league is really positive. The Doc Rivers tree is a good coaching tree to be from. I guess I have a personal predisposition, and I can't run away from Blatt to the Blatt Kerr tree of coaching. These really innovative guys who I think are really involved in where basketball is going in terms of ball movement and in terms of how possessions are run. So in that way, I am more predisposed to that style than perhaps the Doc Rivers style of basketball. But Lou has done an exceptional job with the defense. He has, good coaching assistantships. He's respected by players, and he went out and challenged his players last night. So after a brutalizing loss, so that's a positive to me. I guess I can draw some positives there, but there's nothing in me that says Lou's going to make a difference where he puts them in a position where they're going to win a title this year. And there's still a chance they win a title, but I think the odds are a lot lower than we said they were in November, because they made this coaching change, which is a pretty big signal.
Well, and here's the reality: if they win a title this year, it's likely going to be on the wings of some players, and obviously LeBron James being a pretty important one. I think the key to this team, as from year to year, is how do these pieces fit together, and I think that figuring out Kevin Love, if they can figure out a way to do that, if LeBron James can figure out a way to do that, if Tyronn Lue can figure out, if you and I can figure out a way to do that, that would be great. One last thing, Mike. You can still hear me, can't you?
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing before we close this down. I with the move from Blatt, there's been a lot of speculation that the Cavaliers weren't done making moves. There's been a lot of really strange discussion about trading Kevin Love, trading Kyrie, trading Kyrie for Chris Paul, which we could get into, but I'm gonna stay away from. But probably the deal that's kind of been floated around out there that probably won't happen, but is the most intriguing, most fun to talk about, was a deal between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Sacramento Kings involving Kevin Love and Timofey Mozgov for Boogie Cousins. Now, bringing Cousins in with 2.5 years left on his current deal, 15. I don't know how much would be left this year. Obviously, half of that deal. I think 15.8 next year, 16.5 the year after that. Kind of matches Kevin Love's deal closely. We get Boogie Cousins in here to mix up with LeBron, arguably one of the best big men in the NBA, arguably one of the best players in the history of the game, and Kyrie Irving, who I still think in the next 2 to 3 years will become the best point guard in the league. That's a tasty, tasty rumor, isn't it, Mike? I mean, percentage-wise, what do you think the chances are that the Cavs talk to the Kings and get a deal like this done? And then if they do, regardless of what we think percentage-wise, if they do, could this be the kind of game changer that supersedes any kind of chaos internally with regards to coaching and front office?
Yeah, I think Boogie's the only. I mean, obviously Anthony Davis, but Boogie is one of like 2 or 3 guys in the entire NBA that I'd move Kevin Love for if I was trying to move a big for another big. I think Boogie makes might make a lot more sense in terms of fit with this team. But the rumor mill is going to get pretty ugly over the next month, I expect. I think it's going to be a really brutal session. I think the story that Kevin, when the players only meeting was held to announce the Blatt firing, that everybody expected that Kevin Love had been traded, is not exactly what you want to hear in January. And I think that I don't think that that's the right direction to go necessarily, but I think it's more likely than we want to think that Kevin Love gets dealt. And that's too bad.
Well, I don't know. If you stop and you think back, Mike, back to July 9th, July 10th of 2014, when, LeBron made the announcement to come home to Cleveland, when we were looking ahead, a year, 2 years, I don't know that the chaos that has ensued in that time frame is anything that we pictured would happen. I mean, last year was a roller coaster ride that they go from 21 and 20 to the playoffs, and they lose Love, who was finally starting to play well in the playoffs, and then they lose Kyrie. I got to tell you, I was this what you expected? I mean, I expected a title last year. I expected a title last year. Golden State is one of those teams that scare me because they're coming around, and they could be one of those teams like the Chicago Bulls of the 90s with Steph Curry at the helm of this team and one of the best coaches in Steve Kerr. We could run into a buzzsaw and never win a title, and it may not be the Cavs' fault. But did you foresee the internal chaos? And maybe that's too strong a word, maybe not. That has kind of followed this team from the media, from LeBron, from the front office making weird moves, from David Blatt not making sense, hiring Tyronn Lue. Like, is this just a cavalcade of Cleveland chaos?
Yeah, it's a mess, and I could not have foreseen it in the slightest. I think you make I think one important point is I think the Cavs in this situation where Golden State is really close to being a historically dominant team. I don't think people realize, and I think it's really easy to discredit them because we didn't have two of our best players last year, and they won a title, and it would have been different. It certainly would have, but they are. I think that the Cavs are a 60-win team this year, and the Cavs are a very good basketball team. The Warriors are just a great basketball team right now. They're just great. They have an exquisite coach, and an exquisite system, and an absolutely studly roster. And I think there's the situation where the Cavs, like you said, are running into a kind of historically great team, and LeBron is just a tick past prime. We're edging towards the past prime years, and we're having injury issues, and the Warriors are a great team, and I think it's really possible that this Cavs team doesn't win a title with LeBron, and it won't be because they weren't a very good team. It'll just be because the Warriors were a historically great one.
Well, I know it sounds like I need to talk off the ledge. The interesting thing for me, Mike, in all of this is that I'm positive about this team. I mean, I'm amused by people, discussing, how bad they are. They did get blown out by Golden State, and it concerned me far less than it concerned clearly the front office, clearly Dan Gilbert, clearly most people on the internet. I mean, I was talking to Urbanik off air about, benching LeBron for that game, not playing hard, not showing them what we had, and I was kind of hoping that's why we got blown out. Obviously, that's not the case, but. I know there are some concerning losses. I don't know. I'm concerned about, I guess maybe professional sports as a whole, and that it's a very reactionary game these days. Our patience with winning and with losing is nil. And I suppose Cleveland is a hotbed for that, being that we don't have a lot of titles, and there's the overstatement of the century. But I guess, with regards to LeBron, like I said, I can't make hide nor hair of the 10-game improvement. And we're sitting here talking about a brand new coach with the season, half a season to come. I don't even really know where to go. And I was hoping that vetting it out on this podcast would give me a clearer picture. They go with Tyronn Lue. They'll be a really good basketball team. Will they be great? Will they be great enough to overcome Golden State? I don't know. I'll do anything. I will find chickens. I will buy Joe Boo. I'll do anything to shut Draymond Green up. Anything to shut Draymond Green up. That's my new goal in life. Shut Draymond Green up. Can it be done, Mike?
No.
We should have a whole podcast on how to shut Draymond Green. He's talking shit right now about Tim Duncan sitting because of his knee. Like, I mean, this guy never shuts up, but he backs it up. I mean, he's a great ball player. God, I hate him. Can we trade for him?
No. There's nobody they'd take for him.
All right, we're gonna close out. Who would have thought a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that Draymond Green would be more valuable than, say, Kevin Love? it's kind of an interesting swap of players. But we're going to wrap things up there. I don't know that this went the way we thought it would. I actually kind of went exactly like I thought it would. But we're going to close up shop. Make sure that you check out the website. Today we had a fantastic piece by Joe Cuneo, who is one of our really good writers at Everybody Hates Cleveland, talking about the Indians, the multitude of moves that they made this offseason, and what the front office and management are really looking at with regards to how this team's going to improve this year. He takes a really astute look at that and finds a way to compare it to Jimmy Chitwood in the movie Hoosiers, a fantastic movie, which I'm going to go home and watch. Mike, anything you'd like to plug?
Not one bit.
Well, there you go. Oh. Rich Primo wrote out a really nice piece on whether exactly what we talked about today, David Blatt, and whether or not this move does anything to help the Cleveland Cavaliers whatsoever. My question, I guess, at the end of all this is, will they stop ISOing the LeBron and really driving that offense into the ground? And the correct answer to that is hell no, because that's just who LeBron is. On that note, we close up shop. Next time you hear from Mike and I, or any one of us and I, my hinting suspicion is that we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Indians. Yes, it's time for me to, I guess, pull up my sleeves and start talking about the Tribe, although I don't know that I'm going to rant or rave any less tonight. On that note, we will see you guys really, really soon. Make sure you check out the website. I have no idea what we have going up this week, but chances are it'll be pretty good. Go Cavs, even though you pissed me off.